Welcome back. Let's imagine, if you can, that my lovely wife says to me, I think you need to go visit the doctor because you're carrying a little extra weight right now and I think you need to go get a physical, just make sure you're in tip-top shape. So let's imagine I reluctantly agree, thinking, I am, after all, I'm a basketball coach and there's nothing worse than a wheezing, overweight basketball coach trying to keep up with his players on the court. So I head to the doctor and I'm in for my checkup, and the conversation with the doctor goes something like this. So the doctor says, Oren, you should definitely make some lifestyle shifts. Cholesterol's high, blood pressure's high, and your body fat is up. And so I say, what are you talking about, Doc? I'm in great shape. Check out these guns. You don't know what you're talking about? And then he says, Oren, it's right here in the printout. The numbers don't lie. You're unhealthy. And I say, okay, I know. I suck at taking care of myself. I'm probably the worst husband and father in the world. What kind of example am I setting? I suck. Oh, okay, Oren, don't get too down. There are steps we can start taking today. For instance, it's not totally my fault, Doc. I'm just so busy between making these MOOCs and running my teacher training program, coaching basketball. Where can someone find time to exercise? And this fast food is just so cheap and convenient. Well, that may be true, but Doc, I gotta say, I'm not actually all that worried about this at all. I mean, I've always cleaned up my act eventually. I think everything's gonna be okay. Oren, I have another patient, but you really should... Hey, thanks, Doc. So what just happened there? Well, on some level, I knew that I had to make some changes. That's why I showed up at the doctor's office in the first place. And then the doctor presented me with all sorts of data that validated that assumption. But then I spent the rest of the time running out the clock. I closed my mind in all sorts of ways to the information that the doctor was trying to share with me, and we never got to a point in the conversation where he was actually able to help me lay out a plan to solve the problem. I exhibited all sorts of behaviors that closed me off to growth, or I guess in this case, closed me off to shrinking. The same thing can happen in a teacher coaching session. And if you don't find a way to change those fixed mindset behaviors to get the teacher to stop deflecting critical feedback, you're never going to have a conversation that actually helps solve the problem. The first step here, we think, is coming up with common language for naming these behaviors. That, first of all, normalizes the fact that we all exhibit fixed mindset at times when we hear critical feedback. The second thing that does is it gives you some common language for talking about something which we usually don't discuss openly. And once you have that conversation, we think teachers will be more mindful of these behaviors, and they can often change them right on the spot for themselves. Let's take a look at how this looks in a coaching session. Meet Olivia and Randall. When Randall last observed Olivia, he wanted her to specifically focus on how she notices and responds to student misbehavior. He gave her several strategies to work toward that goal, including issuing demerits, which is a minor consequence that she uses to respond to students who are not meeting her expectations. You're going to see Olivia exhibit 4 common types of fixed mindset behaviors in this coaching session. We call them the 4 Horsemen of fixed mindset.
Hey, Liv.
Hi.
Hey, are you there?
That was so bad.
Yeah, the parts of it that didn't go so great. But I think there were parts of it that were pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's just get started, all right?
Okay.
Let's talk about what your big takeaway was, and then go through and evaluate how you did on it.
Okay, takeaway.
From last week.
I'm sorry, I'm just so foggy. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. So my takeaway was that I was going to increase student on-task time by focusing and noticing and responding to student misbehaviors. There were a lot of them.
Yeah, plenty of opportunities. How'd you do?
Well, it was pretty much a disaster. I feel like I didn't really hit the things I needed to hit, right? I mean, like, it was pretty overall a mess. And like, I didn't redirect, I didn't demerit. Like, I don't know why I didn't demerit, but I didn't demerit. I didn't really think I did anything well. And I just feel so awful because, like, it's a complete waste of learning, and, like, nobody really...
Let me jump in here, right? I think you might be overstating it just a bit. I think there's some good things that happened in this class, too. So, going back to your criteria for success, right? You had 4 of them, and there were 2 of them that I thought you absolutely nailed. First, you used the dock arm instead of the whiteboard, so you were facing out to the class, right? That was awesome. And then you increased your wait time and scanning after each of the questions you asked.
Although, like, I don't know, it's all a blur, but I think that the wait time just ended up, like, causing kids to go more nuts. And
that was Olivia demonstrating, "You're right, I suck." Teachers who respond like this take feedback as commentary on themselves as a person rather than as advice on how to improve their practice. Every piece of feedback cuts and stings. And the effect this has on the coach is that now the coach is in the role of therapist. They spend their entire feedback session just trying to build the teacher back up, and thus they pay a heavy fixed mindset tax.
Hey, Liv.
hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about today. Let's start with the big takeaway. You tell me what it was, and then tell me how you think you did.
Sure. So my big takeaway from last week that you assigned was to improve on-task time during the do now and the guided practice by noticing and responding to student misbehavior.
Yeah, and tell me how you think you did there.
I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah.
I feel like I nailed it today. I had a good feeling. Good vibe.
Okay. I'll be honest, I disagree. I don't think you nailed it. I think there's some good things.
Okay.
But also there's some things that you still need to work on. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the good things first. One was you used the dock arm instead of the whiteboard. That's fantastic. You saw a lot more of the class. And then the other thing was your other criteria for success that I thought you were awesome at was you waited after each question, and that gave you a chance to pause, look around, see what kids were doing before you moved on with the next question. Both of those were really great. Did it feel different to you doing those?
Different? Not really. I mean, it was okay, and I did them purposefully, right? Because you asked me to do it.
I did.
I don't think it really impacted the class that much, but I thought it was okay. No big change.
Your wrong eye rule means that in some way the teacher is disputing the feedback. Either they disagree with how the coach is framing the problem, or they disagree with the solutions that the coach is bringing to the feedback session. In either case, the coach is really forced to dig in, to spend most of the coaching session just trying to justify the data that he has. And that means that there's very little time for actually discussing solutions to the problem.
Hey, Liv.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yep.
All right, then. Tell me about it. Let's get into this. Let's start with your big takeaway from last week.
Okay, so my takeaway was to improve on-task time during the do now and guided practice by noticing and responding to student behavior.
Yep.
Yep.
Tell me more. How'd you do?
So I definitely think there was off-task talking and side conversations. I definitely noticed it. It was a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
A little bit out of control. And so, I can't believe you actually saw that class. My second period, spot on.
Really?
Yep. But this class, it was like third period, right after lunch. And then there was Brian.
Yeah?
Yep, Brian derailed the entire class. He was acting out of control. He was bonkers.
Yeah.
So,
he brought something to this class.
Yep. So I think he's usually not that way, and so I think that the kids came in after lunch, and they'd just been at recess, and they were all hot and sticky and sweaty children.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't get centered and focused. And like I set the expectation that I remember that was one of the things he wanted me to work on. I set that expectation. But man, oh man, they were out of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, there were a few things I wanted you to work on.
Okay.
When a teacher blames it on the rain, they're essentially saying that the problem the coach wants to discuss is not something that they can actually solve. They're saying there are external factors that are causing whatever problem the coach is seeing, and that they have no real agency in solving that problem. That causes the coach to spend most of the session refocusing on things that they do believe the teacher has within their control to change.
Hey, Liv.
Hi.
So, thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. Tell me about what your big takeaway was for last week. Tell me how you did.
Great. So my big takeaway was to improve on-task time during the do now and the guided practice by noticing and responding to student misbehavior.
Cool. And how do you think you did?
Well, there was still a lot of off-task behavior. I noticed like a lot of whispering. You know, I don't think I was perfect by any means, but just part of me thinks that the students aren't super engaged right now. And I'm so excited about the unit that I'm planning for next unit. Like the next unit, I'm just planning all these awesome student-centered activities and performance-based assessment. I'm just like really, really pumped. And I think like, you know, a good lesson will result in like less off-task behavior, right? A good lesson is behavior management. So I'm pretty psyched overall, but I definitely saw there are some things I need to work on.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you know, I agree, right? Like a lesson absolutely has an effect on behavior management.
Right.
And how your kids are acting.
Right.
But you still, even if it's not a perfect lesson, even if it's not like all those great things we saw down the road, you still, even on a lesson like today, it was good, right? You still have a lot of agency in controlling how the kids behave, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. So let's go back to your criteria.
Optimism without a cause is a tricky one. On the one hand, the teacher is mostly agreeing with the feedback. They're not disputing the narrative that the coach brings to the session. The problem, though, is that they're not treating the feedback with enough of a sense of urgency that really suggests to the coach they're going to solve the problem. The coach might be getting through the feedback, but somehow the teacher is dismissing the complexity of the solutions to the point where they're probably not internalizing what they actually have to do to make the changes that the coach wants to see. We show and discuss these exact same Four Horsemen videos early on in our teacher training program here in Boston. It's one of the first things that we do to help prepare our teachers for a year of critical feedback. And we found that the videos alone are a really powerful growth mindset intervention. Our teachers really internalize the language, and sometimes they even self-interrupt in the middle of a coaching session. I've seen teachers stop and say, "Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm blaming it on the rain right now." And then they're actually able to refocus and pivot to a more productive conversation with their coach. In this week's reading, we've written about some other strategies that you can try with your teachers for combating Four Horsemen fixed mindset behavior in a coaching session. Remember me back in the doctor's office? I had like a full-on four-course horseman meal. A little blaming on the rain appetizer, a your right eye suck entree, had a little bit of your wrong eye rule dessert, and washed it all down with an optimist without a cause aperitif. Dr. Tuckett, she had no time to actually talk to me about the details of the plan she was trying to put in place to change my behavior. We think that by implementing some of these anti-fixed mindset strategies, you'll be able to get the ball rolling so that teachers will start to get more out of their coaching sessions with you. But be careful here. You might successfully change their behaviors, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've changed their mindset. We believe this is only step one on a much longer journey to promote growth mindset with your teachers. It's a process that we'll illustrate in our next video with something that we call the snowman effect.
That's your teaser? The snowman effect?
What's wrong with the snowman effect?
You think they're going to come back for the snowman?
No, Ross. I know they're coming back for the snowman.